Branda, state lawmakers are back in Springfield this week to complete unfinished business from their regular session. An energy bill, legislation for an elected school board in Chicago, and a measure related to firearm owners' identification cards. Now, the Senate met today. The House is in tomorrow. And joining us now with more are State Senator Michael Hastings, a Democrat representing parts of Tinley Park, State Representative Ann Williams, a Democrat representing parts of Chicago, State Representative David Welter, he's Republican, representing parts of LaSalle and Will counties, and State Senator Jason Plummer, a Republican representing parts of Southern Illinois. Now, Senator Hastings, the Senate brought back to Springfield really the big thing, the energy legislation. What on earth happened? We didn't get any.
We have some disagreements in terms of the energy bill in general, Amanda. And first of all, thank you so much for having us tonight. I really appreciate it. We have about 85% of the topic areas agreed upon thus far, but we still have some hangups. A lot of those hangups revolve around decarbonization. And I think over the next few weeks, I think we're going to come to hopefully an agreement here on that, and then hopefully make one of the largest investments, not only in renewable infrastructure across Illinois, but saving tens of thousands of jobs across the state as well.
Now, we heard a little bit about that earlier today during a Senate committee. Let's take a listen on that holdup.
Unfortunately, there's some bad news. There are a couple of matters that are hanging up the proceedings right now. One, I'll turn it over to Senator Castro in a second to talk about, involves a matter involving the payment of prevailing wage on renewable projects that I think is close to an agreement. The other problem is just been a much bigger obstacle to overwhelm, and that's agreeing on a schedule for decarbonization.
So decarbonization, Representative Williams, this is something that you and environmentalists have been advocating for, a phase out completely of coal plants. Why is that so important?
Absolutely. Amanda, we need to pass a climate bill, not a utility bill in Springfield. And I'm one of almost 50 legislators that signed a letter to our leaders, which stated unequivocally, without climate and without equity, we have no deal. So while we're very excited about the places that we found agreement and are excited to move forward with comprehensive legislation, we have to have a bill that puts communities, climate, and consumers first. And we're hopeful that we can get there.
Hopeful that you can get there. Again, no deal yet, despite the legislators being brought to the Capitol to vote on this very plan. Representative Welter, can you explain what is the point of calling a special session when there is no compromise?
Well, I think as with any negotiations, things come together and sometimes they fall apart and there's some issues. I believe that when we were intended to come back to Springfield, there was some agreement on a majority of this bill. However, as my colleagues touched on and talked about today, decarbonization seems to be the big sticking point here in terms of why I believe a bill was not passed today in the Senate. But it's a great question. I'm in the super minority, so the Democrats have a super majority in the House and the Senate. Technically, they don't need Republican votes, but to get an energy package done, as we've seen in 2016 and prior years, it's been a bipartisan effort. And that's what it's going to take ultimately to get this energy bill passed. There are so many things in it that may seem controversial to one caucus or one legislator and maybe not so much to the other. So trying to find some common ground and agreement. And I believe what our caucus, the Republicans, continue to advocate is for a green energy future. But what I would say is we just have a much different philosophy and view on how we get there compared to maybe many of our Democrat counterparts. A one-size-fits-all for Illinois is not going to work in this situation. What works in the PJM market in Northern Illinois is not going to work in Southern Illinois. And that's what I don't believe we're necessarily respecting or taking into account. But hopefully that will happen, and we need to get something done really by the end of June.
Representative Welter, what are you looking for that would be different for your parts, the area that you represent versus, say, the Chicago area?
Well, I have a very unique district in that it's the most energy intensive district in the state of Illinois. I get to represent 3 of the nuclear plants, Dresden, Braidwood, and the LaSalle station. So a lot of jobs, a lot of direct jobs at these plants, but also a lot of secondary jobs with the vendors that come into these plants and work. So that is important to me, but it should also be important to those folks like Representative Williams and others who advocate for, zero carbon or no carbon emissions. In order for Illinois to get to the goals of where we all want to go, we can't do that in the short term without nuclear. And I think there's some common agreement about that, but it's really about what support we give. And in these negotiations right now, that doesn't seem to be the sticking point. The nuclear provisions have been agreed to somewhat verbally since we left Springfield on May 31st. Again, the sticking point is the decarbonization that really targets central and southern Illinois jobs, forces closures prematurely, puts municipalities on the hook for millions, hundreds of millions of dollars in bonds. These are issues that are just unacceptable to our caucus and downstate. And I'm hearing that from a lot of downstate Democrats as well at this point.
Now, I do want to touch on these nuclear plants because, of course, a few years back, Illinois did come forward with subsidies paid for by ratepayers to keep open a pair of nuclear plants. Now, Exelon asking for money to keep open another 4 of these plants, and that would be Byron and Dresden. I'm looking at my list here. So we see them. So there we go. Quad Cities and Clinton did, as you see in yellow on your screens, will have already got this ratepayer subsidy, and now Braidwood, LaSalle, Dresden, and Byron looking for a ratepayer bailout. How do you justify that at this point in time, Representative Williams, given that Exelon, at least its subsidiary ComEd, has been mired in this corruption scandal?
Well, you said it well, Amanda. We have clearly not had the appropriate oversight over the utilities prior to this, and that's what resulted in the ongoing ComEd scandal. So I think one important foundational piece of any energy legislation deals with utility accountability and ethics provisions. That includes everything from putting an independent monitor at the ICC to monitor compliance and ethics proposals from the utilities themselves, to changing how we do rate making to eliminate automatic or formula rates. The reality is nuclear is a necessary bridge to get us to a renewable energy future. And we can't afford to continue spewing coal and carbon emissions into the air. We've got to do what we can to get those plants offline, rely on nuclear to get us to where we can be 100% renewables in the future.
Now, Senator Plummer, got to bring you in here. We've talked a lot about how the big point of contention is what is going to happen with Illinois' coal plants and when they need to be phased out. And a big one there, that Prairie plant that does provide some electricity to some of the western suburbs of Chicago, but also is based in your district. We had a bipartisan group of 52 lawmakers writing a letter this weekend opposing the closure of plants like Prairie State, saying if Prairie State and City Water, Light and Power, which is in Springfield, are prematurely shuttered, Illinois will need to import power from other states, likely from less efficient coal plants. This would transform Illinois into a net importer of dirtier power and a net exporter of jobs. So, Senator Plummer, what is your answer for the future of Prairie State?
Yeah, so well, first off, Amanda, thanks for having me on today. This is an important conversation. I think one thing we have to recognize is the fact that we're still talking about an energy bill right now shows that this is a complete failure in leadership. We have folks in Springfield that are driven by ideology instead of facts and good public policy. And the reality is, we really need to have a diverse energy base here in Illinois. We need to make sure that we are looking for the future of the state. A couple of things that I want to touch on. Illinois gets a bad name in here. We have a lot of problems when it comes to attracting jobs, attracting businesses. And, one of the few things that we have in our favor right now is low-cost energy and a reliable grid. We're known for that. And we have those things because of the diverse energy supply we have. Right now, we have ideologues going after nukes, going after coal, going after gas. And, there's a lot of special interests involved in this conversation. My simple question is, who is in this room that's standing up for the ratepayers in Illinois? Who is in this room standing up for the working families of Illinois? Because if you go after Prairie State, if you go after the plant in Springfield, if you go after some of these other suppliers, you're going to, just like you said, be bringing in power from less efficient plants across the country. And we're actually stepping backwards instead of moving forward together. We all want to
we'll get to that. We'll get to that more perhaps coming up. You guys will be joining us once again in just a bit, legislators. So that is where we're going to have to leave it for now. Again, we will be joined by state lawmakers later in the program to discuss the Chicago elected school board proposal, also FOID card legislation. But for now, our thanks to Senator Hastings, Representative Williams and Welter, and to Senator Plummer.